Welcome to today's webinar entitled Vision Zero and 2+1 Roads. I have the pleasure of being today's moderator. My name is Brenda Suggett and I am the Executive Director of CARSP. With me is Navoda Relagadaj, who is our technical support person, and our two speakers, and I will get to them in just a minute. This is a first in a series of webinars which are part of our Knowledge Exchange and Trading Hub project through the generous support of Transport Canada. As part of this initiative, we will be hosting monthly webinars to publicize, which will be publicized through an e-blast to our members and in the webinars and events area of the CARSP website. Also, webinar recordings will be posted in the members area, and after 1 month, will be publicly available in the webinars and events area of the CARSP website. Just some housekeeping things. You are invited to share your questions at any time using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. However, questions will be answered after both presentations. Now to introduce our first speaker. Dr. Matts-Åke Belin has over 30 years of experience with the Swedish government, primarily working with overall safety policies, strategies, and collaboration with different stakeholders. In 2007 to 2009, Dr. Belin worked for the World Health Organization in Geneva, where he participated in the development of the global road safety strategies and global partnerships. Dr. Belin has also chaired a technical committee with the World Road Association and has served on a U.S. Transportation Research Board Standing Committee on Transportation Safety Management. Dr. Belin is also the Swedish delegate in the UN's Road Safety Collaboration, and they're the group that produced the Decades of Action, and has served as national and international senior policy advisor and supported different Vision Zero initiatives around the world. Dr. Belin was also deeply involved in the preparation and organization of the 3rd Global Ministerial Conference on Road Safety in Stockholm, February 2020. Currently, Dr. Belin is Director of Vison Zero Academy at the Swedish Transportation Administration. Parallel with his work within the Swedish government, Dr. Belin has also an academic career. Dr. Belin has a PhD in public health policy from Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden. He is also affiliated with the KTH Royal Technology Institute in Stockholm, where he is serving as adjunct professor on traffic safety. Dr. Belin is also responsible for a research program funded by the Swedish Transportation Administration to promote research and policy, implementation, and innovation within the transport sector with a focus on Vision Zero. It's very nice to have you, Dr. Belin. You may now do your presentation.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that kind introduction. Okay, see if I can start my screen here then. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Oh, perfect. All right. Yeah, so tonight, for me, it's night. It's 6 o'clock in the evening. So tonight I will give you some insight in this Vision Zero as a policy from the Swedish Vision Zero. So in 1997, next year we will celebrate the 25th anniversary. The Swedish Parliament adopted Vision Zero, a very bold decision, I would say. And basically, this Vision Zero is expression kind of ethical imperative that it can never be ethical acceptable that people are killed or serious injury when moving within the transport system. So that was a very bold decision, and we can see now how this Vision Zero is starting to spreading around the world, and also spreading actually to other sectors in our society. For example, in Sweden we have Vision Zero on suicide and lots of things. But a thing that have struck me when I see what's happening is that some places they see this more like a kind of slogan, something that is more a campaign thing. But for us who've been working with this Vison Zero is much more than that. It's a new way to think about road safety, and it's a new strategy. And one way for me to explain Vison Zero is to compare it with a more traditional approach to road safety. And of course, when I'm talking about this now, it will be a little bit black and white. In reality, we're still working a lot with this traditional approach, but we are definitely, during this 25 years period now, moving away to something else. But let me start with this traditional approach to road safety. The problem that we try to solve in the traditional approach is the problem with crashes or accidents. When we make in-depth studies of crashes, we will find that 90% of all crashes is due to human errors. And that is a kind of mantra, 90% of all crashes is due to human factor, 90%. It's been there almost since the introduction of the car in our society. So therefore, we have put the ultimately responsibility for safety on us as individual road users. So if something goes wrong out there, you can always find an individual to blame. And our strategies that we have put in place is very much aimed to try to creating a perfect human being who always doing the right thing. So we work a lot with regulation, with information and enforcement and so on. That has been our basic means in our toolbox. And also this traditional approach is very much based on that people don't want safety. So we have to force them to want safety, so to say. So that has also have a great impact on the relation between the government and the individual roads users, for example. And the goal with all this is to step by step reduce the risk. And although we are not so explicit about it, in the traditional approach, there are some kind of idea about an optimum of number of fatalities, serious injuries. It's a kind of price that we have to pay for our mobility. So this is the more traditional way to think about safety. And Vison Zero as a policy challenge all these aspects now. First of all, the problem that we try to solve in a Vison Zero kind of policy, it's not the crashes per se. The problem that we try to solve is fatalities and serious injuries. And according to Vison Zero, the reason why people get killed and serious injury is because people are people. We have young people, we have old people, we have all kinds of people using our road transport system on a daily basis. And humans make mistakes. And we also know that humans are fragile. We have a certain tolerance against external violence. So that is the major problem that we try to solve, the causes of this problem. And I used to take one example just to clarify the difference between this traditional approach and Vison Zero. If you have a typical 4-lane intersection and you have crashes in that intersection, the traditional approach to that problem is to put up a traffic light. And when you do that, the crashes will be reduced, but those who will happen will be very severe. Because the typical scenario is someone by mistake go against this red light, and due to the high speed and a high kinetic energy, the outcome will be very severe. But if you do a roundabout, the number of crashes actually might increase a little bit because it becomes a little bit more difficult to drive in a roundabout. But those who will happen will be less severe and will be survivable. And this traffic light and roundabout might actually be the difference between life and death. So therefore, in a Vision Zero policy, the ultimately responsibility is put on us as system designers. And of course, the individual road users still have a responsibility, but if something goes wrong, it goes back to us as system designer. And let me just take another example that can show the difference in the mindset. Take a problem like drink and driving. Sweden, we have working with this problem for many, many decades now. And actually, the first time that we set up a special threshold for how much alcohol you are allowed to have in your blood when you drive your car was 1940. And it was a Swedish doctor, he came up with a method how to measure the alcohol concentration in the blood. At that time, we put it on 0.8. And then we have changed it from 0.8 to 0.5, and now it's 0.2. And we also have delivered lots of campaigns, information, education, and all this kind of thing. And the sanction, if you get caught by drink and driving, is very severe. You can end up in the jail, actually. And we also allow the police to make random breath controls. So you can be stopped anytime, any places, and be test for if you had drinking alcohol, so that they don't have to have some suspicious that you have driving with alcohol in your body, for example. It's just they can stop anyone, and this strategy has been very successful. So when the police make random breath controls and check for people drinking and driving, they will find that 99.8% of our traffic is sober. This is fantastic. So we have no social norm problem when it comes to drinking. But when you do in-depth studies, you will find that 25% of all fatal crashes is still alcohol related. So we don't have a social norm problem, but we still have a safety problem. And in a Vision Zero policy context, probably the most effective countermeasure that we have for alcohol-related crashes is the middle barrier, and I will show you later here. Because a middle barrier don't care if you are influenced by alcohol, if you are fatigued, or if you're distracted. It will only prevent it from killing yourself or someone else. So that's probably number one in a Vision Zero kind of priorities of countermeasures. And of course, we can't put up middle barriers everywhere. So we think in the future that we need some kind of device in the car that will prevent us from drink and drive or impaired driving. And that device will be as common as a seatbelt. And we push a lot with this technology now and to make it happen. So for example, now 90% of all school buses and taxis in Sweden have installed alcolox, for example. So that's the same old problem, but it's a different way to solve it. And Vision Zero is also based on the idea that people want safety. When we make it clear for people what the options are, they will go for the safety options. And probably the most important example on that is the Euro NCAP, where Sweden has been very active in these European when we test cars and give them stars for safety and so on. And we have seen how that dramatically have changed the market. When people realize that this is a 5-star and this is 1-star, we see how that dramatically changed the market. And of course, in the long run, we would like to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries. And that is what most people connected to this Vision Zero. But for us who working with it, it's much more than that. It's a strategy. It's a way to think differently on how we should solve this road safety problem. And this is what actually the Swedish Parliament adopted in 1997. But as you all know, a policy, just a policy, it's just a piece of paper, and it's a different story to go from policy to implementation. But fortunately, we have been very successful also to do things based on this new philosophy. And I would say it started in the urban areas. And this curve, I would say, is the kind of scientific base for Vision Zero. It's about kinetic energy. And in the heart, in the core of Vision Zero, in that strategy, is about controlling for harmful energy. And that is something that William Haddon already taught us in the mid-60s, that is our COVID virus. We have to control for harmful energy. And this curve showed us that if you get hit by a car in 50 kilometers, the risk that you get killed as an unprotected road user, as a pedestrian, it's more than 80%. But if you get hit by a car in 30 kilometers, the risk is less than 10%. But the thing is that we as individuals, we don't understand this. We don't have any perception of kinetic energy. We can drive in 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. We don't feel the risk increase when we is out in the traffic. And but we have, when we started to work with safety, we set in Sweden, for example, in 1956, we set up an urban default speed on 50 kilometers. So we used to have that as in this environment, we have 50 kilometers, at least we have a sidewalk, and this zebra crossing is actually a very dangerous part of our road transport system. And in the traditional way to work it, we put the ultimate responsibility to negotiate about their safety between two individuals, the car driver and the pedestrian. So one single mistake can end up in a total catastrophe. But we as individuals, we don't understand this. We don't see this kinetic energy. And if we had the capability to have a perception of kinetic energy, if we saw these risk curves like this, and there are things that we are quite good to understand, this risk with snakes and spiders and heights. And if we could transfer kinetic energy to, I don't know the English word for it, but from heights, we will see this situation like this. And you can imagine all this demand on safety for these people. And we will realize that we have to do something about this zebra crossing. It's not just to paint some color on the roads. We have to make sure that we have a lower speed than 30 kilometers in this situation, where we start to plan mixed people, the unprotected and protected road users. And this knowledge we started to spread around the country in the late 90s to especially our municipalities and our traffic engineers. And when you come back now, if you compare Sweden in late 90s, how it looked now in some of these municipalities, you will see lots of speed bumps, lots of traffic calming, lots of special areas where you give priority to pedestrians and cyclists, and lots of roundabouts. So it's definitely a change in the way that we design our urban areas, and we put the unprotected road user safety as number one in these cases. But for us, Vision Zero is not only about urban area, it's a national policy. So we have to work both with the urban area and with the rural area. And I don't have time to go into detail of everything we have done, but this is, I think, a very good example on Vison Zero in practice. Because we used to have this kind of road. They are 30-meter wide. We used to allow 110 kilometers on this road. And if you calculate the number of crashes per kilometer driven on this road, you would call them a quite safe roads. At least that's what the road engineers, my friends within the Swedish road administration, said. They thought that this was a quite safe road. But if you ask the people, they would call these death roads, because now and then there were some accident on these roads, and the typical scenario was it was a head-on collision where someone tried to do an overtake and then did some mistake and they end up in a head-on collision. And due to the high speed and high energy, it was a catastrophe. Always 1 or 2 or 3 deaths or serious injuries. So for people, for ordinary people, this was death roads, I would say. And of course, we had a solution on this, and that was what my colleagues in the road administration, they wanted to see a motorway here, and we know that the motorway is very safe. And but we ask ourselves, why is a motorway safe? It's because we don't have any head-on collisions. We have very safe intersections. We don't allow unprotected road users on these roads. Okay, what can we do about this head-on collision cheaper than build a motorway? So we came up with this 2+1 road with this middle barrier. And it works like, first you have 2 lanes in one direction, and you can make a safe overtake, for example, overtake this truck, for example. Then you have 1 lane, and then after some kilometers you get 2 lanes again, and they work very, very good. And when we started this program, it cost us about 1 billion Swedish crown per saved life if we have built the motorway. But the first project that we built with this 2+1 was about 30 million per saved life. So they were extremely cost effective, actually. And the risk between these roads is that this 2+1 road is about 90% safer than these more ordinary roads. So I think that is a very good example on Vison Zero in action, I would say. So it's a very practical thing. And now, when we started, we used to have 0 kilometers with these roads. And now we have more than 3,000 kilometers with these roads. So it's very unusual that you, as a Swedish driver, that you are on roads where you can have a head-on collision, especially if you live where there are a little bit more people living. When you get a little bit north and into the region network, there we have still a problem, and that is actually our next step. The next 10 years, we have to do something about these roads. But we also have, per population, one of the largest, what we call them, traffic safety camera program. And we working with this camera in a way that is very unusual, because we don't catch people with them. But I don't have the time today to go in detail on that. But if you compare to many other countries, we are implement them in a total different way, and we got very big support for these cameras among the public. We don't have any resistance. Therefore, we have started step by step. We can expand this program. So we started also with maybe the 600 cameras, and now we have more than 3,000 cameras. So if I just wrap up things here a little bit, some example on interventions that have been promoted in the Vison Zero framework. Of course, in the urban areas, you said it's very much about traffic calming and control for the speed, and give priority to unprotected road users. In the rural area, we have worked a lot with these 2+1 roads, but also with traffic safety cameras. And we are also trying to take so much advantages we can from new technology. And there are so many things now that is so promising from a safety point of view, but it will not happen by itself. It's very important that the safety community become more engaged in the discussion about what's happening in the car industry, and make sure that we get the intelligent speed adaptation system, that we get devices that prevent people from impaired driving and that sort of thing. It's too much talk about self-driving cars. I think there are so many other things before we have these self-driving cars. So we work a lot with that to take advantages of it. And a matter of fact, when we started this Vison Zero, I think it was a little bit more a kind of visionary thing, but now we get more and more serious about it, and that is due to this digitalization, because we think that there are lots of things that we can use it for. But in the middle of everything that we are doing, as I said, the main thing is to control for harmful kinetic energy. So therefore, we put the speed and the speed limits in the middle of it. So when we have started a journey now to setting the speed according to the safety design of our roads and our cars. And that means that, for example, if you are in a modern car and you have a head-on crash with another modern car, the car industry have promised us that they will take care of the problem up to 80 kilometers with the seat belts, airbag, automated braking systems, and so on. But above 80 kilometers, we can't have head-on collisions. So therefore, we need to build barriers and that sort of thing. If we want higher speed, we need than 80 kilometers, we need to do something about head-on collisions from a safe system perspective. And as you can see, we have different kind of accident types there. Protected road users, unprotected road users, they're talking about 14 now because they have this automated braking system and so on. So we have can see that we can change a little bit these speed limits, but the speed limits need to be set according to the safety design and standard of the cars and the roads. So it's a different mindset when it comes to speed limits and setting speed limits. So when we started this journey in late 90s, Sweden had one of the safest transport system already in that time. We had about 7 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. But the discussion in that time was that if we are top performance, we can't be better. It will be very difficult to us to get better. But we have shown now that we have gone from 7 fatalities to now 2020, it was less than 2 fatalities per 100,000 inhabitants. So that's just show that even top performance countries have lots to do when it comes to road safety. And there have been lots of things that we have done on the way here. Okay, I think I stopped there so we can get some time for questions later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Belin. That was a great overview of Vison Zero and the importance of 2+1 roads in your country. And I would now like to introduce our second speaker, Mark Wilson. Mark Wilson is retired from a 30-year career in occupational health and safety and is a Canadian registered safety professional. Mark was also a volunteer firefighter for over 25 years. Mark is now the resource member of GEMS, which stands for Going the Extra Mile for Safety, a road safety advocacy group in Northeastern Ontario. GEMS has been advocating for the implementation of 2+ roads on rural and northern highways in Ontario since 2015. Mark is also involved in other road safety advocacy groups, both locally and nationally. Thank you very much, Mark. Take it away.
Great, Brenda. Thank you very much. Can you see the screen all right?
Yes.
Okay, and just checking that my slide is going to advance here. It isn't yet. Just a sec. Not quite sure why it's not advanced. There we go. Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, Brenda, for the introduction, and thank you, Matts, for the presentation. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about is some more specifics on 2+1 roads from some of the research that I've done. So as Brenda mentioned, I'm a member of a group called GEMS, Going the Extra Mile for Safety, and we're located in Northern Ontario, and we've been advocating for a 2+1 road pilot project in Northern Ontario since about 2015. So my role with GEMS is committee is to collect information on 2+1 roads and report to various groups. And this presentation is based on a fact-finding trip that I took to Sweden and Ireland in 2018, where I toured and experienced 2+1 roads and met many road safety experts. And I do have a report on that trip. First of all, I would like to thank everyone I met with in Sweden and who were so helpful and hospitable. And here's some pictures of just a few of these people. On the left, a great crew from Trafikverket, the Swedish Transport Administration, who hosted me for a day on a 2+1 construction site. And on the right, of course, Dr. Matts-Åke Belin, who you have just had the pleasure of listening to. And I would also like to give special thanks to Mats Remgaard and Oscar Lundblad from Trafikverket, who have been exceptionally helpful to our cause. I also had the pleasure of visiting VTI, the Swedish National Road and Transport Research Institute, where I met an excellent, many road safety researchers, excellent researchers, including Dr. Anna Vadaby. And I was also provided with a tour of their crash lab facility, which you often see around the world. It's a world-renowned facility. In Ireland, I also had the pleasure of meeting with the head of road safety of Transport Infrastructure Ireland, Alistair De Beer, and I was hosted by some of his colleagues, Fiona Bohan, Albert Daly, and Keith Berry, as we toured 2+1 roads. So let's just look a little bit more detail at 2+1 roads. Matts showed you a picture of a 2+1 road before conversion, a 13-meter road. And so you'll notice the two travel lanes are 3.5 meters wide with 3-meter shoulders. These were the roads, as Matt said, that had high fatal and serious collisions. They developed a system to transform these 13-meter roads into 2+1 roads. Using the same platform, and as Matt said, a much more economical way of making the road safer. So this picture is at the same location after conversion, and now it has two 3.25 meter lanes on the one side and one 3.5 meter lane on the other, separated by a 1.5 meter flush median reserve, which contains a crash-rated physical barrier. So in this case, it's a wire rope barrier or a high tension cable barrier. In some cases where the terrain is difficult, 2+1 roads take a slightly different form. Here's an example of a 1+1 profile that is used when there is simply not room to provide the full 2+1 profile. So this has significant advantages to 2+1 roads when it comes to reducing costs, while at the same time maintaining safety. As Matt's mentioned as well, the profile alternates on a continuous basis, roughly every 1 to 3 kilometers, and that allows both directions of traffic many opportunities for overtaking slower vehicles. And The goal is generally 40% of your journey is a passing opportunity. Sweden has been building 2+1, the 2+1 design on volume capacities between 2,000 and 18,000 or 20,000 ADT. And they've also started converting many of their 9-meter 2-lane roads. As Matt's mentioned, some of the more rural areas have smaller roads, and they've started converting some of those to the 2+1 profile. And these roads would require some widening to carry this out. The speed and performance has also been studied in various reports, and some of these reports are referenced in my report. And generally, 2+1 roads have seen slight speed increases over 13-meter roads, and most of those increases are on the 2-lane sections. Posted speeds generally are 100 kilometers an hour, and traffic performance is very good, up to 1,500 vehicles per hour. So obviously a big part of the 2+1 roads are the median or the mid barrier, and there have been various types used on 2+1 roads. So this is a picture I took in southern Sweden of a cable barrier in the 1.5 median reserve. This one is a version which crosses from side to side on the posts, and there's one cable up the middle. Also note the rumble strip on either side of the median reserve, which warns drivers, obviously, if they get too close to the barrier. Here's another picture of a high-tension cable barrier, but this is an inline style. All the cables are sitting in the middle of the post, and the posts bend when they're hit. And of course, the purpose of the purpose of the posts are to hold the barrier to the proper height. So this picture is from the 2+1 construction project I visited in Sweden that I mentioned earlier, but this photo was sent to me after it was completed by the barrier manufacturer, who I also visited in Sweden. You will note here that the use of the semi-rigid steel barrier. So this is now standard barrier type used in Sweden and Ireland and other countries. And the primary reason for the change is the significant reduction in maintenance costs and the ability for these barriers to resist minor hits more effectively. And you'll notice that this particular barrier sits in a sleeve on the roadway. Just a photo from Ireland here that you'll notice the same style of cable barrier. Again, they have moved to the semi-rigid steel barriers. Also note a slightly wider profile on these Irish carriageways. And in Ireland, some of the 2+1 roads became unsuitable for the volume of traffic that they were experiencing. So they were able to expand some of their 2+1 roads to a 2+2 profile. And they've had great success with that as well. The 2+1 roads, oh yeah, sorry, a little wider profile. Here's a road from Finland. Again, a wider profile. This profile is somewhat more what we might consider as a Canadian model with a wider shoulder. That's been some of the discussions that we've been having about that, is that we perhaps need a wider shoulder. And you'll notice the semi-rigid steel barrier on this one as well. And here's a photo from Australia where, again, this cable barrier, but you'll notice the wider shoulder in this particular case for their 2+1 roads. And they have an extensive network as well. So 2+1 roads can be built at a fraction of the cost, as Matt's mentioned, and you know, they're built on an existing platform or slightly wider. And there can also be significant reduction by using at-grade junctions rather than costly grade-separated intersections. Of course, grade-separated intersections can be used as volumes increase, and although the reduction of the number of intersections provides a safety benefit, it's certainly a goal we want to achieve. But the 2+1 allows much more flexibility in this process than motorways or 4-lane highways. This is the construction project that I visited that I mentioned earlier, and you'll notice the thin line between the rumble strips. This is where the barrier is placed, which is the last stage of the construction process. And the construction company representative that I met indicated that the installation of the semi-rigid steel barriers are generally easier to install than cable barrier types. Just quickly here, maintenance operations involve the use of TMAs. So we've got our truck mounted attenuators for worker protection. Those are used extensively in Sweden. And most of the maintenance is performed from the 2-lane side, as you can see from this photo. I apologize, that's from my dash cam, and it's not a great photo. I also spoke with representatives of the trucking industry, and they support 2+1 roads, and because they know that their drivers are safer. And as you can see here, there are many locations built into the system for heavy goods vehicles to safely pull off the road as needed. And so I also traveled to Sweden in December 2018, and again met with many great people like Johan Fredriksson from the Swedish Road Barrier Association, who's on the right. And we met at a training facility for barrier installers near Stockholm. And on the left, I met with a team of Trafikverket officials who hosted me for a day on 2+1 roads near the Arctic Circle. Now, the purpose of the winter trip was to, of course, focus on winter operations. So here's an example of a snowplow with a wide wing that effectively removes snow from both the single lane and double lane sections. And in some cases, they will use 2 plows for tandem operations. And so looking at some of the statistics, this 2009 study, again, is referenced in my report, is one of the many that's identified the success of 2+1 roads, and Matt's mentioned it as well, by virtually eliminating head-on crashes on the rural road network. And, you know, again, as Matts has indicated in his presentation, this road design significantly reduces kinetic energy of these crashes, and so humans can survive, and that's why they've been so successful. This 2015 study compared the relative risk of dying on various road types, and as you can see, 2+1 roads compare very favorably to 4-lane divided highways or motorways or freeways. We also see much higher risk on 2-lane rural roads, which is common around the world, and certainly here in Canada, due to high numbers of road departure or crossover collisions. So just to summarize some of the key points of 2+1 roads, as we've said, the safety results are very close to that of divided highways. They can be built at a tremendously low cost. There's less environmental impact because of that. The design can be flexible to the terrain, so 1+1 where it's difficult to expand the roadway, and expanding to 2+2 when the volumes require it, as they've done a lot in Ireland. They're very effective on road networks, and I can say from personal experience that they're very, very nice roads to drive on, both in summer and winter, and I've driven quite a bit on them. And they continue to be built around the world, and so I think others are seeing the benefits of them. So just to, as we get to the end here, we're beginning to see the use of median barriers in narrow medians in Canada, and this is a photo I took while visiting with the Ministère des Transports in Quebec near Gatineau, and this 6-kilometer segment opened in 2020 and is primarily a 1+1 profile with a very small section of 2+1, and so far the results have been good. And this was built as an interim measure until this section will be twinned in a few years. So just to, we can see by this graphic, and Matt's brought it up as well, that Sweden's a leader in road safety thanks to Vison Zero, and also how Ireland has made significant improvements. We can see that the safe system design, Vison Zero design, can make our roads safer. You'll notice as well, we're comparing Northern Ontario, and this is why our group's been advocating for 2+1 pilot project. We continue to experience fatal head-on crashes on a regular basis on our northern highways. So in response to that, the Ontario government has committed to a 2+1 pilot project in Ontario, and we would sincerely like to thank the Ministry of Transportation and also the Minister of Transportation, Carolyn Mulroney, for this announcement. And I'm a member of a working group along with the Ministry of Transportation representatives working on a location selection process. And we're at the stage now where we're finishing up the report and expecting an announcement quite soon. I just have, lastly, just to finish up, a couple of little video clips that I thought I would play here. Just note that the date on this is wrong. This is June of 2018. And you'll just notice here a 2+1 road. You'll notice the, oops, sorry, I repeated it there. You'll notice the semi-rigid steel barrier. You'll notice the delineation posts on the right-hand side. You'll notice the rumble strips on both sides of the road. And as we approach this farm on the right, there actually, in some cases, are personal entrances that are put into the barrier where it's interrupted for a very small section, and it's coming up on the left, and it'll be the video will stop, but it's just right where that transport truck is, and allows access to both directions of travel, so it makes it a very flexible road system. Here's a little shot of the single lane side. The last one was on the 2-lane side, so here's a winter shot as I was driving north towards the northern part of Sweden. And you'll see the semi-rigid steel barrier. They have parking areas that we just passed there, very commonly on the single lane side. And you'll see that the road becomes 2 lanes here at the bottom of the hill. And you'll see the signage on both sides of the road indicating that you're opening up into a passing opportunity. And the last one is just a quick shot of some traffic protection. Oh, pardon the volume. So here's the use of TMAs, and this is up very close to the Arctic Circle, and you can see the results of plowing operations. It had snowed the night and that morning, and we were returning to a city by the name of Luleå, where I had met these officials from Sweden. That just gives you a little bit of a sense of some of the roads in the 2+1 roads in Sweden in different conditions. And that's my presentation. And I'll stop sharing that, Brenda. There you go.
All right,
Okay,
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was excellent. And thank you so much for all this research that you did and for your passion and your advocacy for 2+1 roads. And I know you were also very instrumental in getting that pilot test or pilot study, I should say, underway with the Ministry of Transportation in Ontario. Well, now is the question and answer period of our webinar. And I'm just going to look over, and we do have one question, and it is to Dr. Belin. It is from Zina Chiwaka. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is, what rationales do you see, in brackets, in your opinion, on applications of 2+1 roads in geographical, sociodemographic variations globally?
Yeah. Let me answer this question like this. In 1992, the Traffic Safety Agency and the Road Administration merged together. And the road administration in Sweden, the Swedish road administration, got overall responsibility for everything that has to do with road safety. And I started actually my career already in the traffic safety office. It was a special agency for road safety, just like NHTSA in US, for example. And it's been there since late 60s. So that was a very important government body for safety. And we were very successful in Sweden during the 70s, but in the 80s, the number of fatalities started to increase again. So the politicians decided to take one step to merge these agencies together. And so we, as road safety experts, we came in a new kind of culture, and together with with road builders. And to be honest, I must say that my experience now to work with these issues, and when I'm talking about Vison Zero, it sounds like a very smooth and easy process, and everyone applauded and was happy about these 2+1 roads and so on. But that was not the case. You know, it was a big conflicts within the Swedish road administration between the safety advocacies and the road engineers and road builders within this road administration. And my experience is that the road builder culture is very conservative. And they building roads now based on manuals and other things from 1930, 1940. And they have been a little bit stuck into that mindset, you know. So because I think that when we start to open up that box a little bit, and we get this discussion, and they become more innovative, and they start to think about doing things good for the user of the roads, then things started to go. So the reason why I'm saying that's my experience now. When this idea is spreading around the world, we see a lots of resistance about this idea, and we see a lots of arguments that I'm not sure is true, you know, and that will be I think it's a great idea. I think I don't understand why not more countries start to implement this around the world. But as Mark said, we see a few examples in Australia. We see a few in Ireland and so on. But Sweden, we have done that in a large scale now. We have 3,000 kilometers with this 2+1 road. And I would like to see that much more spreading around the world. But I think that there is a problem because this kind of conservative culture. But I can't see any problem to spreading. I wish it happened more, I would say.
Just to follow up to your answer, Dr. Belin, I'm just curious, what would some of the arguments be for someone advocating from a socio-demographic perspective? Like I'm just trying to give us some ideas how we can bring it in more into our country. What are some good ways that you can advocate for and present the information so that it is acceptable and it does meet, you know, answers the questions of those road authorities?
Yeah, so I'm not sure because I don't know. I haven't followed your discussion about it, but I can see there is some. It seems to be when that idea, at least in Australia, because I know more about Australia because I've been there for 1 year. And I know that I recognize the argument against in the same way that we discussed in Sweden, but and I guess that there are lots of culture things in this discussion, I think, and I presume that a little bit if you go to at least this is the case in Sweden. Because we built a demonstration project in a small part in Sweden, and when we did that, no one from this road administration culture, they didn't want to cut the ribbon. So actually, it ended up with Claes Tingvall, our traffic safety director, going there and cut that ribbon because they didn't like this. And I guess the reason why is that if you are a road builder, you would like to do motorways, you would like to do bridges, you like to do tunnels, this big stuff, you know. And now we suddenly solve the road safety problem to a large extent with just the middle barrier, you know. And they knew because integrated in the whole discussion is this cost-benefit analysis. So they knew that if we solve the road safety problem, then it might not be a motorway there eventually. And the plan was to build a long motorway from south of Sweden all the way up to the north of Sweden. And one of the criteria was safety, of course, but we could show that we can do it to a smaller amount of money and so on, but that was something in the culture discussion. So I used to say that when we implement Vision Zero, we didn't have any problem with the politicians. We didn't have so much problem with the citizens. The most problem we had was internal professional discussion of what we should do now.
Okay, great, thank you. And we actually have two other questions now. The first one is, how well do the 2+1 roads work at intersections, particularly if there aren't traffic controls? That's a good question. And yeah, go ahead.
No. So that's the weak spot, definitely. That's part of the weak spot of it. So we have worked with different solution on it. These traffic safety cameras, for example, we have used to lower the speed in these intersections and use traffic safety cameras and also variable speed signs and so on. So we have used and also start to do a different kind of design of this intersection that we force people to lower the speed in this intersection. But that is part of the weak spot of this. And as Mark said, if we have enough with traffic, then we might do a different solution on it. But that's part of the weak spot. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Can I just a quick comment on that as well?
Yeah, go for it.
In our application on northern highways on a lot of Canadian 2-lane roads, the implementation of a 2+1 in the mid barrier would actually, there'd be a process that we'd have to go through, and ultimately, one of the things that I learned in Sweden was where there are intersections, the intersections can then be put in the proper place. Now we have so many unrestricted entrances, whether they're a private entrance or a small side road. But now they can be put in the right place where there's better lines of visibility. So, in the early stages of 2+1, the intersections can be placed more effectively. And that's another positive in the sense that, you're right. We really, intersections are always the weak spot in any roadway, but there are some advantages simply to reducing or asking people to go very short distances to turn around in a more safer location, right?
Very good. So it gives the attention that area, that stretch of road needs, and so there's a side benefit, I guess, of having that as well. Okay, and we've got another one. How do drivers respond to 2+1 roads? Do they like them? Like when you first put them in and they've just introduced it to an area, what's the reception like?
Yeah, if I can start, because maybe what Mark will also add his experience. But in first time, you were very afraid. It feels very unsafe to drive on a road with this barrier on your side. And that shows a little bit what I said about perception. We can pass another car in 110 kilometers and we feel it's okay because we don't have this perception of kinetic energy. But when we see these barriers, then we feel more unsafe. But that after a while, we adjust to that. So we adapt to these 2+1 roads. So now, I can tell you a story because I lived in Melbourne for 1 year in 2006 with my family, and then we went back in 2015, and we did a lot. We drive around a lot that time, And for the first time, when I was on some of this road, I have the same sense that I have when I go to Africa and I am in a car without a seatbelt. You know, I felt insecure. I'm so used to now to have some protection for head-on collision. So I feel unsafe on this road, you know. So it's interesting how we adapt your behavior and your perception on things. Mark.
Yeah, and I've driven over 3,000 kilometers on the Swedish roads now, and it didn't take me long to adapt. I just felt very comfortable on them right away. I mean, they're similar to some of our passing lanes, except there's a barrier, and so I felt that they were really easy to drive on, and more reassuring after that sort of initial, relatively short period of time driving on them. And I should just also note that certainly in Ontario, we have some of the sort of 2+2, particularly north of Toronto, there's some 2+2 situations where we have a mid barrier. It's a semi-rigid steel barrier in a relatively narrow median. And I think people are used to driving on those as well, with that median barrier on their left that I don't think is a significant issue for any drivers here in Ontario or Canada for that matter.
Okay, well, that actually brings us to the end of our webinar. So thank you so much to both Dr. Belin and to Mark, and very interesting. I think we've all got a better understanding of 2+1 roads, and hopefully we'll start to see more of them. We'll all be advocating our governments and departments who will allow them. So all the best. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks very much. And thanks, Matts, for
Thank you.
taking the time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.